Are you a first responder, a veteran, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, or a Let's Go Blues radio listener? Of course you are. If you're in the market to buy or sell a home, call real estate superstar Mike Burgoyne today at 314-753-4060 or email him at mike@strikewithmike.com to earn special rates today.
60 Pickleball is an industry leader in high-end pickleball paddles. Use discount code CPRICE10 to get 10% off at 60pickleball.com. Don't get stuck on the court with an inferior paddle. Go next level with 60.
Have you subscribed to the LGB Minute podcast yet? It's a 5-minute weekly St. Louis Blues podcast hosted by Jeff Ponder that is released multiple times a week to fill the gap between Let's Go Blues radio episodes. Subscribe today.
So awesome, so handsome, so smart, you'll agree. Curt, Jeff, and Bill are on TV. It's radio on TV. Oh yeah, it's radio on TV.
Happy training camp opening day, everyone. I'm Jeff Ponder, and this is Let's Go Blues Radio, the original and longest-running blues hockey podcast. We are entering the end of Season 14, and this is episode 46, and the 527th episode of all time. Probably, one more episode of Season 14? Unbelievable that we are entering our 15th season here, coming up very soon. Support for Let's Go Blues Radio is brought to you in part by Mike Burgoyne of Real Brokerage Realty. Check out strikewithmike.com and get started selling your current home or buying your dream home today. On today's show, Stephen Ground of the Two Guys, One Cup podcast joins me, and we discuss blues news, including the recent prospect showcase, the upcoming preseason, and a recent extension for a certain Australian blues winger. I wonder who that could be. I mentioned last week we'd be joined by Matt DeFranks of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, but unfortunately he had other obligations arise and could not make it. So a huge thank you goes out to Stephen Ground for last minute jumping in and agreeing to be the, the emergency backup for Mr. DeFranks. So thank you very much for that, Stephen. And, very insightful guy, knows his blues hockey, and, have a great discussion coming for you today about some recent blues news. And how about that right there in itself? Blues news, like actual blues news. We are entering the season, folks. And again, opening of training camp was today. We're recording this on September 18th. So very exciting that we are at this point in the season. So make sure you stay tuned here as Stephen and I break down some of the stuff that we've seen, heard, and obviously there's some news that came out for a recent extension for a player. And so, yeah, we talk about it all. Open of the show here is going to be very brief just because, like I said, we're going to talk about all the blues news as I normally would at the start of the show. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. Let's take a quick commercial break here. On the other end of it, you will hear from our friend Stephen Ground of the Two Guys, One Cup podcast, and we're going to be talking all blues all the time.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
As a hockey player, Mike Burgoyne knows a thing or two about making the perfect play. And when it comes to real estate, he's always ready to score the winning goal for his clients. If you're a first responder, a veteran, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, or a Let's Go Blues radio listener looking to score the home of your dreams, you'll receive special rates with Mike. Go ahead, shoot some questions his way, and he'll have the answer quicker than Curtis Joseph on a breakaway.
Curtis Joseph got the pedal down!
Any barriers? Mike will mow them down like Chris Pronger in front of the net. He'll score you your dream home or sell your existing home faster than a Brett Hall one-timer.
Flip past the Hall, he shoots, he scores!
See Burgoyne's real estate prowess in action today by emailing him at mike@strikewithmike.com or by calling 314-753-4060. That email again is mike@strikewithmike.com, and that phone number is 314-753-4060. Getting Mike Burgoyne on your team will be the boost your power play needs.
The battle for the top spot in the league is on the line. Many warriors have entered the concrete jungle. But when the smoke clears, only one will remain. They all want it, but only one shall have it. Hide your children, lock your doors. Those with weak stomachs should almost certainly look away. This is Big Boy Pickleball. You have been warned.
Already know that you love hockey and you obviously already love the Let's Go Blues Radio podcast, but what about filling the gap between weekly Let's Go Blues Radio episodes? That's where the LGB Minute comes in. Hosted by Jeff Ponder, the LGB Minute is an entertaining, down and dirty, 5-minute St. Louis Blues podcast released multiple times a week to keep you informed of all things St. Louis Blues. So make sure to subscribe to the LGB Minute anywhere you listen to podcasts, like right now. Do it now. Just click subscribe. It's easy. Please. Now.
And now, back to Let's Go Blues Radio, the longest running St. Louis Blues podcast with Price, Ponder, and Day.
All right, we are back from break, and as you can see, if you're watching the video, we are joined by our friend Stephen Ground of Two Guys, One Cup, I guess we'll say second favorite blues podcast. We have to at least say that we're our favorite, even though I don't think any of us really listen to our own show. But Stephen, thank you very much for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me. Great to be back with you.
Yeah, of course. It's been a while. I don't think we've had you on since like maybe last summer or 2 summers ago even. I don't know. Yeah. It's been a while.
Well, it's good to be back.
Yeah, glad to see you and Ian are still rolling too. Any plans for the upcoming season for the two of you?
Nothing crazy. We're trying to, he had a baby a couple years ago, so his schedule got a little wild there. So we're hoping to get a little more consistent, but it's been fun. We're keeping up.
It's tough. I mean, I'll tell you. So we started this show before I had a kid, and it was like all the time in the world. I will edit this show after I've edited it 3 times already. Then I had a kid, and it was like, oh, I don't have time to do anything. So I totally get it, Ian, if you're listening. Totally cool. It gets better as they get older. But then you got to deal with them hating you for a while. But we won't get into that, Stephen.
That time will come. Yeah, it'll be a while.
Yeah, right. Well, Stephen, I asked you on the show today because I wanted to talk to you. There's some big, I don't want to say big blues news, but obviously the biggest blues news is that training camp has opened. Prospect Showcase is over. But the biggest thing really is really Nathan Walker. Big news came out yesterday for the fourth line winger, our favorite Australian hockey player. He re-signed a 2-year deal. $1.775 million was the extension total. His AAV is $887,000. Last season, dressed in 73 regular season games with the Blues, setting a career high with 16 points, including 8 goals, while leading the team with 63 penalty minutes and 281 hits. And he was big, I thought, in the Blues' first-round series against the Jets. He did actually share the team lead in goals. He scored 3. Obviously the why am I drawing a blank on the name of the line? The WTF line was a big line for the Blues last season. They were a big driving force of the Blues, getting some offensive zone pressure, making defenses' lives hard, trying to get out of the zone. So we all appreciated that, but now Radek Fox has moved on. I was going to ask you towards the end here about, your thoughts on some of the Blues moves this summer. So we'll see how that goes. But what's your feeling, your take on Nathan Walker returning to the Blues for 2 seasons?
I feel like it makes a ton of sense. He's sneakily become one of the longest tenured Blues now. I think he's been here since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just one of those guys, I mean, I feel like Blues fans say, oh, he's a player St. Louis loves, about gritty, tough guys. But I think that's a player any fan base loves, right? He just works his butt off all the time, but has a lot of grit, physicality. You can tell. I mean, his whole story is amazing, just being, an NHL player from Australia and sticking in the league as long as he has. And he's that perfect guy who's never going to complain about going out of the lineup if he gets, benched for a couple days or even, sent to the AHL. I assume this is a one-way contract, so that's probably not an issue. But, he's just a good guy to have around. I'm sure he's a popular teammate. I think the fact that he was our leading goal scorer in the playoffs is more of an indictment of the rest of the team than it is really a credit to him. But hey, he gets in the dirty areas, as Hitch would have said, and he gets the job done. So I've never been the type to freak out about any contract that's less than $2 million because who cares? But I think it's a great move, or it's a fine move. I don't know if I can say great because I don't know that the upside of the impact is that high, but everybody loves him. He's a good player. He's going to work hard.
Yep.
He's not that old yet either. So I think we're in a good spot.
And I'm with you too, that when he was not re-signed by Washington and the Blues picked him up, I do remember Capitals fans saying, why not sign this guy back? Like he had a very short tenure in Washington. He was part of their cup team, but like he was liked. And so when we got him, and I'll admit, I actually followed his career because my friends over at the Puck Podcast, they have, for some reason, the Puck Podcast has a large Australian fan base. And so they were always emailing in like, oh, there's this kid about to get drafted named Nathan Walker, who's from Australia. And like, so I kind of followed his career before he even joined the Blues. And so I was excited when he came here because I thought, oh, that's great. And I'll admit, I've heard stories of people in Australia becoming Blues fans because of Nathan Walker. So, not saying that, St. Louis, they're the Blues and Doug Armstrong are thinking, oh, we need to get that Australian following. But like, it is kind of nice to have like, well, that there are people down south that are actually watching the Blues because of one player. And like you said, like he's kind of an inspiration too. It's not just his grit, his determination, but we just saw a video recently come out of him talking to other kids. I think one kid was from Sydney, maybe, and how important hockey has been in his life. And for me, I love this signing. I'm with you. I would even say there's been a couple signings right under 2 million that I've been like, really? We need him?
Yeah.
But like, under $1 million, especially. I mean, that's 887,000. That's just above league minimum. Give me that all day. I think that's a great signing for him, and it's short term too. If this was a 5-year extension, I'd be like, what are we doing? But 2 years for a fourth liner at that price, I'm all for it. And a guy who's contributed to the Blues for a long time now, and again has shown he does have a little bit of a scoring touch. But I'm with you though. A bit of an indictment on the rest of the roster. The fact that Nathan Walker led your team in goals in the playoffs.
Yeah, not great, but that's not his fault. He did what he was supposed to do. Everybody else just needed to do their part.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's get into talking a little bit about the Blues prospects. So over the weekend, the Blues did have a 6-4 win over the Wild at the I always forget the name, Tom Kurvers, at the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase up in the Tria Rink in St. Paul, Minnesota. So they started off the weekend with a 6-4 win over the Wild. The next night they played the Blackhawks prospects and they lost 3-2 in overtime. But lots of the thing here, and I always say on this show is, you're not really looking at the wins. You're kind of looking at the overall play. How did they look? If they got down in a game, how did they bounce back? Like, how were players reacting? And for me, the takeaway from this tournament was the offensive skill that we saw. I hate to keep beating this drum because we've had Mike Myers on. I know, Steven, I think I've seen on social media, you're a big fan. Justin Carbonneau, the Blues #1 pick from this past year. he has looked. They did the development camp in was that July, and we saw the semi-viral video of him scoring a sick goal after making a big hit. Now we see him. He scores in this tournament. He had a really nice assist on a goal in the first game. For me, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I don't think I think he's already basically said he's not coming to St. Louis this year. He wants to go play elsewhere, but for the future, this kid looks like the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that Doug Armstrong probably hasn't gotten enough credit for over his tenure is his drafting success, especially in the first round. I mean, he's been here almost 15 years now almost, and has basically drafted, I think, 2 first-round busts, and one of those Dominic Bach we traded before he ever became a bust for us. So, like, you know, with due respect to Jordan Schmaltz and everything he's doing on Twitter these days, I would say he's like the worst outcome of all the, you know, Armstrong era first-round picks, and even he played games in the big leagues, you know. So it's really an incredible track record, and especially since he's consistently been drafting in the teens and 20s, you know, picking guys that have that high ceiling, guys like Robert Thomas, you know, who come to mind as like, we got them way lower in the draft, and in a redraft, I'm sure he'd be top 10, if not a top 5 pick. I'd have to go look at that year, but, you know, he'd be very, very high on people's lists. So, you know, Jimmy Snuggerud's another example of that. Looks like he's going to be a big star. Jake Neighbors too is a very strong player, and it feels like Carbonell, obviously, you know, you can only project so much into the future. But I also think it's funny when people talk about like prospects and players when they, you know, people love to talk about a prospect like there's just no the range of outcomes is just infinite, you know, like they'll love to say that, oh, well, he could just be terrible. And it's like, I don't think that's really on the table here either, you know. So let him play. I think he's going to college this year, right? Which is a fun new wrinkle in the development process, which is going to, I think, be really big for hockey and for a lot of prospects, that opportunity to play in the NCAA going forward, especially for the OHL players and CHL players. But he looks great. I mean, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, but he looks pretty phenomenal. And it looks like we might have gotten a late round, or not late round really, but a steal in the first round.
So Carbonell's actually going to the Q, which is still, you know, we've seen some excellent talent come out of the Q. So yeah, absolutely. I don't think there'll be any shortage of excellent coaching he'll be getting. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, just seeing the development. You mentioned the other first round bus. You mentioned drawing a blank on his name. You just said it. The bus they had.
Bach or Schmaltz?
Yeah, okay. And then the other one I was thinking was David Rundblad. I'm not sure if that was the Armstrong pick, but the Blues ended up trading him the very next season for Vladimir Tarasenko in order to draft him. So clearly, and that was a Doug Armstrong draft for sure. So clearly he's pretty good with his young assets. He's turned a lot of good players around in this organization to, you know, being kind of cornerstone pieces. I mean, we saw the Stanley Cup run, obviously, with guys like Schwartz and Tarasenko and Pietrangelo, all homegrown talent. Now we're seeing this new crop of players come through, and you know, you mentioned Snuggerud, obviously, as the one that comes to mind, but Dalibor Dvorsky, another one. He played really well. From what I saw, I didn't watch, you know, the full tournament for both games, but from what I saw, he looked quick, he looked energized, and he was impossible to knock off the puck. Now, again, this is a guy playing against kids. This isn't an NHL roster, but to see him be able to just step in and he also he was wearing an A, so he's part of the leadership group with these young guys. Very excited to see what Dvorsky will do this season, and I do think we'll see him in more than one game that we saw last year with the Blues.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think he's a guy. I don't want to put too much pressure on him. I'm sure he's a regular listener to your wonderful podcast, but he feels like a guy that a lot of the Blues' future hinges on, in the sense that, like, if he can come in and be another Thomas level center, and we have those two guys, you know, down 1 and 2, and have a really strong core at center, then we, you know, can potentially reopen a cup competition window. And I think about it how Doug Armstrong thinks about it, because I think he nailed it with like kind of the idea of a Stanley Cup window. And I know a lot of fans think our Stanley Cup window is open right now. I don't think that, and I doubt Doug Armstrong, if you could get truth serum into him, would say that either. I think he's building it for it to be open in 1 or 2 years, and I think Dvorsky is a huge part of that plan. If he can come here, find success, find his footing, this season should just mostly be about, can he be a consistent NHL player? But then going forward, I mean, we saw even when the Blues did win the Cup in 2019, Thomas starting the season as a fringe guy, getting in and out of games, and then by the playoffs, he was absolutely a critical piece of that third line and set up the double OT goal for Maroon and all that. So if Dvorsky could go on a similar trajectory, and I think he could. I mean, he's the highest draft pick we've had pretty much in the entire Armstrong era, then it really sets us up for the future. And we've got just an abundance of offensive talent right now, and I don't know, you and I have never talked about the Bolduc trade. I know that was not popular with a lot of people, but it having that abundance up front does give you those options to make moves that then bolster out the rest of your roster, and that's clearly what Armstrong has done and probably is planning to do going forward.
Well, something we're very good at on this show is taking detours as we talk. So let's do that now, because I would actually love to hear your thoughts on that trade. We talked about it on this show, obviously, when it happened, and we're big fans of, when you have an abundance, trading for a need, and I feel like that's what the Blues did.
Mm-hmm.
The verdict's out on Mayu still at this point, but what were your thoughts initially and now that the trade has kind of not been grabbing headlines anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, I would say I was one of the more positive voices on Blues Twitter in terms of reacting to it, because, I mean, I think it's as simple as this. If we look 5 years at the best possible outcome for both guys, Zach Bolduc is maybe a 30-goal scoring winger, and Logan Mailloux is maybe a top 4 defenseman, maybe even top 2. I'm just best case scenario. That top 4 defenseman, top 2 defenseman is way more valuable than a 30-goal scoring winger in today's NHL. So, a lot of people wanted to react by looking at what they'd accomplished already in the NHL. And they're like, well, we got, completely hosed on this trade, and that just doesn't make any sense. We're trading a guy that's proven it, because you can't get a defenseman that's proven it. You can't go out and get Owen Power or Rasmus Dahlin or whoever. You can't get those guys for anything but a king's ransom. So we're taking a chance. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it looks like a terrible trade in 2 or 3 years, but that's actually kind of what I was alluding to before, when people are like, well, this kid's totally unproven. It's like, he's not just going to turn to, dust when he steps on the NHL ice. He's going to be probably a pretty good defenseman. We just don't know how good the ceiling is. And I think to take that chance, I mean, obviously his background, personal matters is a different part of the story. And I'm not trying to, eliminate that necessarily, but, I'm willing to, I guess, forgive what he did as a 17-year-old and just kind of look at it as a clean sheet going forward. But, that obviously probably affected some people's opinion too. But just as a purely hockey move, I love Bolduc. Obviously, we gave up a really good player. That's how you make hockey trades in the NHL. Yep. But I think the position of need for us is so clearly to have 1 or 2 cornerstone young defensemen going forward. We probably got one last year, looks like, with Broberg. Now maybe Mailloux, maybe Juracek becomes that as well. And then we've got a decor, and then we've got a fighting chance, so.
Yep. And I'll admit, from what I saw from Juracek over the weekend, he looks just as good, if not better, than his brother. And, he's so quick with the puck. And I'm with you on this with 100%. With the minute this trade went down, I think everyone's first thought was, oh, man, Bolduc. Like, you kind of think, like, man, maybe, and I always love the people that are like, well, why didn't they just trade Jake Neighbors? Why didn't they just trade, such and so? And I'm like, that's not
Like they
how
would've-
trades work. Like
Right, and also
Montreal's
like they
just
wouldn't
like,
have been mad about that too,
right, yeah. And it's like, like Montreal's just sitting there going, just give us one of your wingers and we'll send you Mayu. Like that's not how it worked. So
Yeah.
for me, like it made sense when you consider all factors that it would be Bolduc because it's a guy that just had a really good breakout season. Yes, it was under a new coach in Montgomery, which I know kind of stings some fans a little bit, but at the same time, it was a position of need for Montreal to get a winger, and it helps. He's a francophone. He can speak their language, and that's a big thing in Montreal. So to
He
me, it's
probably
like
loves it.
I know that was a target for Montreal. They were like, oh, if we can get a good, skilled winger for this team that's up and coming, and he speaks our native tongue, that's a win-win for them. So,
Yeah,
and I think it's a nice fresh start for Mayu too. After what you said when he was 17.
For sure. And another thing, just to point out about Bolduc, and I'm not trying to drag him at all. I think he's a phenomenal young player. But last year, his age 21 season, he had a 15.8 shooting percentage and a PDO of 106. So both of those would indicate, for people who are less familiar, that he's probably overperformed, which is not to say he wasn't good. It's not to say he was lousy. It's just to say that maybe he should have had like 15 goals instead of 20 or whatever, and I feel like the trade feels very different if you're trading a 13 goal scorer instead of a 19 goal scorer as a 21-year-old. And I think Doug Armstrong probably knows that and probably thinks, hey, I think this kid's good, but maybe he's not as good as, maybe he's not going to be immediately as good as he looked like he would be last season. And so now's the time to sell high and buy medium or low and try to make this work. We'll see. Maybe, like I said, maybe it blows up in his face. That's sometimes how trades work. But I think on the total history of Doug Armstrong's trading track record, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think honestly, best case scenario is, and obviously this is with any trade, I think it's an even trade. I think, in 5-6 years, we look back at this and Montreal says that was an excellent move for us. And then best case scenario for the Blues, we say this was an excellent trade for us, And so I think a lot of like Buffalo fans talk about the O'Reilly trade still, and how they say they won the trade. I'm like, you didn't win the trade because the Blues went on to win the cup. And by the way, the guy you sent us, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP. So for me, you didn't win it. We both won it. And I think that's kind of the way you look at this trade. Best case scenario, I think Montreal knows they got an excellent player in Bolduc, and the Blues are willing to take that chance on a young guy who, by the way, was, I believe, AHL. He's either defenseman of the year last year or he was in the running. I know that. But a guy that's a kid that very clearly could be an NHL talent coming very soon.
Right. 22-year-old NHL-ready defensemen don't grow on trees. They're hard to get. He was an AHL All-Star 2 years in a row. So, he's ready. We got to get him that shot.
Give me anyone who can replace Nick Leddy in the lineup, and I will love you.
True. That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, training camp obviously opens today. That's a big deal. We're recording this on September 18th. The news that came out today, Jake Neighbors is going to miss the first 3 days of training camp to attend to a personal family matter. But other than that, the rest of the lineup's ready to go. For you, I know you're not exactly in St. Louis, so you're not able, to attend. But for you, like when you go to training camps, when you look, what are you looking for? I know you've got a good hockey mind. You're a guy who really studies the game. What are you looking for when you're looking at training camp?
I honestly just want to see that guys look, healthy, look like they're in good shape, look like they're getting sharper. I mean, training camp is for working out the kinks. It's not really, obviously, for, fringe players, for the Milan Lucic's of the world and the prospects of the world. It's an opportunity to try and earn a roster spot. But for everybody else, it's just, guys who had their roster spot set, Robert Thomas, Colton Parayko, they're just getting sharp. They're showing that they're strong and healthy and fit. And so, that's kind of what I'm looking for. It'll be interesting to watch some of those, like I said, the 18th, 19th, 20th roster spot and see if Dvorsky, for example, earns this spot right out of camp. If, Lucic has gas left in the tank, which I've got to be honest, I don't believe he probably does, but, Doug Armstrong would know better than I do, whatever that case may be. But it's that. And then it's, how do the new guys fit in with their teammates? Pia Suter, whose name I never feel comfortable pronouncing, Nick Bukestad, those guys, how do they get in here and start to gel? What are the line combinations maybe going to look like? That sort of thing. I think it's...
Well, if you want to feel more confident, when the Blues signed Pia Suter, I did actually message a friend in the media that worked for the Canucks, and I asked him, is it Pius or Pius? And he said, I have asked him to his face, and he says it is Pius.
Okay,
so,
well, good. I feel much better.
There you go.
But
Good
I
work.
think, thank you. But I think just to put a button on it, the number one thing to avoid during training camp is just any kind of overreaction. We see that every year, and it's always absurd, but save yourself from the stress of thinking that maybe Jimmy Snuggerud's a 50-goal scorer because he scored 2 on Joel Hofer in training camp.
Right. Yeah, and it goes the same for preseason too, because I know that, man, I mean, there's a lot of it's jokes now, because I think people realize how overreactions can, lead to people just being angry for no reason. But like, there are those people that they'll see, a Blues loss against the Stars on Saturday, let's say, and it'll be, oh my God, I can't believe they only had 14 shots on goal and they lost 5-2. It's preseason. Relax. Come on.
Half of the roster in preseason. Is this the year? I think they're doing less games starting this year, right?
It's next year, actually. They're doing 6 games this year still. This is the last year of 6 games.
But even so, half of the roster usually is just filled out by guys who aren't even to have a chance to make the team, so you really
I believe it's 10 players have to be like on your actual NHL roster, or at least like were on an NHL roster the season prior or whatever it is. But so you're still going to get that talent. But for me, the most exciting part is watching those younger guys, like seeing Adam Juracek jump into a game, and seeing how a Dalibor Dvorsky might play with like a Dylan Holloway, like that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to see these young kids step in and the different roles they'll play, penalty kill, do you give some time, do you give it to the veterans to let them, get prepped for the season, or are you like, hey, let's see what Karchik could do on a penalty kill, so that's the kind of fun thing. And I think that's what coaches like about preseason is, if there is one thing to like for them, is, kind of being able to do the mix and match and see where guys can play in certain positions. And for me, like, that's the best part. And, Blues, obviously, we've mentioned every name's in training camp. I imagine whatever's going on with Jake Neighbors, we'll see him probably by the start of the season, it sounds like. But for me, kind of seeing Jimmy Snuggerud in his first full camp, full preseason with the team. And then other guys, like you said, Dalibor Dvorsky is a big name that's coming up. I think a guy like Adam Juracek could be sticking around until one of the last roster cuts. Matthew Kessel is a name that you want to watch because of the weird up and down we've seen this season. But so for you, I mean, they're going to be streaming all the games on the Blues app and on Blues YouTube. Are you going to be watching these games? And if you are, what storylines are you kind of looking for?
Yeah, I will check them out. I don't know if I'll be glued to every second of them because they can get pretty revolting, especially in the later periods. But, I'll check them out. And I think you're right. I think for me, it's just where do those young guys fit in? I just Googled to make sure that Jimmy Snuggerud did not play enough games last year to lose Calder eligibility for this season. So I would put him on the watch list for that. I honestly think he looks so good, especially stepping right into the playoffs and playing at a high level. It'll be very interesting to see how he slots in the lineup. And I think you've got to look at the Bolduc move as a vote of confidence in Snuggerud too. So we didn't really cover that earlier, but I think they have big plans for him. but yeah, I mean, and biggest thing for me, I think, is those young guys earning their spot or not earning their spot, and seeing where we go from there. And then obviously watching Mayu play with the team and similar kind of role. I think his spot's a little more set in stone, but I'm sure I love every year you hear the GM say, well, we told this kid nothing's guaranteed. He's got to earn it. And it's like, you say that to literally every player, so why are you telling me? But yeah, I think those young guys and fringe guys to me still are the ones to watch. Not the guys who are like AHL roster fillers, but the rest of them.
Yep. Yeah, every now and then you'll get an AHL guy that kind of steps up and looks good. Like the name that comes to mind for me is Oscar Lindblom. I believe his first name was Oscar. Pateri Lindblom. He stepped in out of camp and they were like, whoa, this kid looks good. And he played really well for the Blues for a couple games and then went down and we never heard from him again. But so you always get those kind of guys that'll kind of step up and play really well too. So we'll see if any of those names come to mind. Keep in mind, folks, Saturday is the first Blues preseason game. It is September 20th. They're in Dallas, starts at 6 o'clock. And then again on Sunday, they play the Blue Jackets in Columbus at 4 o'clock. And they do not play again until the following Saturday. So we will have another show before then. But yes, that is your preseason schedule for the next week. I wanted to get your thoughts before we close up here, Stephen. Just everything else that's happened this summer. Obviously, we've kind of mentioned the Justin Carbonneau pick and how good he's been, but also Suter signing, Nick Bukestad. We mentioned Logan Mailloux already, the Lucic PTO. Anything you want to comment on that the Blues have done this summer? And overall, what are your thoughts on the Blues this summer?
The Lucic PTO made me queasy, I'll be honest, but I don't think, I think Armstrong will make the right move. It's probably just Peter Chiarelli doing a favor for an old friend or whatever, but
that's what I'm thinking.
It was a strange, like just waking up and reading that. It's like, did I wake up in 2022 or what's happening?
Yeah.
But no, overall, I think the Blues had a very good, but I would say a maybe incomplete offseason. I think the Bukestad and Suter signings on a day when a lot of money was thrown around were probably two of the most responsible. The Suter one to me is like, I'm still confused how we got, it feels like I really don't know how we got him for that price for that short-term a deal. I think he's just a really good center. I mean, he's not going to come in and be a game stealer or anything, but he's just going to be very responsible, very good, fit right into the team. And Bukestad, I think, kind of steps right into that Foxa role. I kind of wish we'd kept Foxa, but he got to go home to Dallas, which I'm sure, he had hoped to do. So, good for him. But the reason I say incomplete, and maybe this is just, fan reading too much Twitter and rumors and stuff, but it just feels like they were hunting for another big move. And it feels like a lot of teams in the NHL were. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of like, oh, this is going to be the craziest offseason ever. There's so much money moving. But I guess I wouldn't be surprised to say, I'm not calling for it. I'm not trying to call my shot or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of September, October surprise move by Armstrong, kind of similar to the Falk trade, and just, see somebody move that we didn't expect. I think he wants another young guy. I think he would like to hand Alex Steen a team that has another young stud in the defensive group. I think other than that, really, the team is in really good shape for a new GM to take over and have a chance at success over the long haul. We've already talked about the forward group. Obviously, Bennington and Hofer, if you keep both guys, your goaltending seems really secure for the long term. But the defense, I mean, I've written articles about how bad a mess Armstrong made of the defense. And I honestly think he's done a remarkable job untangling it. But that's still not quite to where it needs to be to compete. And I think he'd like to solve that. And then the last thing I'll say is, I think just signing Jim Montgomery is one of the best moves Doug Armstrong has made in his tenure. And just, and with respect to, I'm blanking on his name. He was coached before him. Was it Drew Bannister?
Drew Bannister.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that That name came to me immediately, and I was like, that was like 6 coaches ago. But yes, with respect to Drew Bannister, he just, I think you just have to go out and get that guy. He's clearly one of the best coaches in the NHL and has the history to St. Louis. So it'll be very exciting to see him coach for a full season here. And, I think he'll be a coach in St. Louis for a very long time to come. Still a pretty young guy by NHL coaching standards, and obviously loves it here, married a St. Louis girl. So I don't see any reason that a lot of coaches the clock is kind of already ticking when they get hired, but for him, I think he's got a very long leash, and I'm excited to see him have a full season with the team.
I'll say I've said this since the start. The minute Jim Montgomery was fired by Boston, I knew, I'm like, Armstrong's going to go get him. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, Bannister could be on an 8-game run right now, and he would still let him go, Yeah,
I mean, I think the way the Bannister extension went down, it's pretty obvious Armstrong was waiting until Boston got bounced to see if Montgomery would be fired.
Yep.
And then, I hate to say it like this, but I think he kind of hired a guy that he felt like it would be pretty easy to move on from. And
yeah,
hey, listen,
and it's
Drew Bannister got a nice paycheck out of it, so he's not.
He did, but it is unfortunate for him because I thought he was, he did a fine job here in St. Louis, right. And from what I've heard, like, he was an excellent coach in Springfield. So I do hope, I haven't seen any news on him, but I hope he bounces back because I do think he deserves another shot. But it was just one of those casualties of war, where it's like, sorry, man. Like, and I think he even said that in the press conference when Armstrong announced it, much respect to Drew Bannister, but when a guy like Jim Montgomery becomes available, you got to make the move, and I think he did the right thing.
Absolutely.
Well,
agree.
Steven, always fun talking with you. I appreciate you coming on. And of course, you guys are 2 Guys, 1 Cup. I know I've already said it, I think, in the intro of the show, but you can be found on all podcast platforms, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, whatever. But also let people know where they can find you guys on social media and how they can interact with you.
And just at 2 Guys, 1 Cup on X. I rarely actually call it X because my muscle memory is so strong, but it's all spelled out in letters there. You can hit us up anytime. You can hear me, overreacting to Blues news over there. So mostly me. Sometimes it's Ian. Like usually it's me overreacting, but then sometimes I'll get a text from a friend that's like, "What are you talking about with this?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So you never know. But over there is the best place to get a hold of us if for some reason you would like to do that.
When you say that muscle memory says it's still Twitter, I always say the same thing when I hear that. I always say, well, it'll always be a report to me.
That's right. Exactly.
St. Louisans get it. Nobody else does.
I still call it Scottrade sometimes. So,
I do too. I called it Keel the other day. My wife was like, where? And I was like, oh my God, did I just say Keel?
I love it.
Yep. All right, Steven, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. And again, that is Steven from 2 Guys, 1 Cup. Find him wherever you get podcasts. Thanks again, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Well, again, thank you to Steven for going over the recent Blues news with me. I know he hasn't done a show himself in a little while, so I'm sure it was fun for him. Hopefully it was fun for him to come on and talk some Blues hockey. And make sure you subscribe to all of 2 Guys, 1 Cup's stuff. It's basically wherever you get our show, you will get their show, except obviously the video aspect of it, YouTube and Facebook. But go over to Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, wherever you get podcasts, Amazon Music, I think even. You can find all of 2 Guys, 1 Cup stuff there. So again, thank you to him for coming on. Next week, still not sure. I did have a guest lined up, but maybe, I don't know, that one may not work out either. But if not, maybe I'll ask Matt if he's available again next week. We might have him come on. Matt DeFranks, that is, from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We'll have a show for you, though, and then I think the week after that is our season preview show and the opening of season 15 of Let's Go Blues Radio. So you don't want to miss that one. That one will be live. So again, that will be in 2 weeks, right around the opening of October. Might be that Tuesday, might be that Wednesday, but we're talking about 2 weeks from now. start of season 15, but more importantly, our season preview show for the 2025-2026 season. Support for Let's Go Blues Radio is brought to you in part by Mike Burgoyne from Real Brokerage Realty. Email him at mike@strikewithmike.com or visit strikewithmike.com today for all of your home buying and selling needs. That will do it for episode 46 of season 14 of the original St. Louis Blues hockey podcast, Let's Go Blues Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great week, everyone. Enjoy preseason hockey. It is streaming everywhere that you would get your Blues stuff. The Blues app, I believe Blues YouTube also has picked it up. Enjoy preseason, folks. We're finally getting to the start of the season here. It's been a long summer, and we're all excited here at Let's Go Blues Radio. For Curt Price, Bill Day, and our friend Stephen Ground of the Two Guys, One Cup podcast, I'm Jeff Ponder, and I will talk with you next week. This was Let's Go Blues Radio. Until next time, everyone, let's go Blues.
TV talking St. Louis Blues hockey, moving fast, can't catch the beat. Skates on fire, ice on defeat.